Hello and welcome to April 2025 block of the month. And this month we've got some fun little blocks. We're going to be making 2 of these cute little butterfly blocks and then 1 large flower block. So to begin, we're going to start with the butterfly, and I've got 1 completed, and we'll go ahead and make the other one together. And so I started off drawing a bunch of diagonal lines corner to corner on some different size squares, and I've oriented them how I need them to go according to the pattern. So now we're just going to go ahead and stitch on those drawn lines. Okay, and then while I'm here, I'm gonna sew on the little center part of our butterfly, and it gets just a little top and bottom piece added on. Okay, and then now we can go press those. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and press those. And I am going to just set my seams first, and on this piece I am pressing towards the navy. So we can just set that one aside, and then on the rest of our units we're going to set those seams. So I'm just giving them a press, and then I'm going to flip the corners back and press those down. Okay, and then I'm gonna trim those seams. I'm just gonna pop that top triangle back, trim approximately 1/4 inch away from my seam, and then that just removes that excess triangle of fabric behind that. And I'll do that on all of these easy corners. Okay, and now we can go back to the sewing machine. Okay, now I'm going to sew my top and bottom wing units together. So lay them out, orienting them correctly so that the corners that we just added are in the right spots, and then we can just flip that over right sides together, line that up, and go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch seam on that. And the same on the other side. I'm just going to put those right sides together, line them up. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and give those a quick press. Okay, those are pressed, and I pressed both of those open. And then I'm going to add the center part that I've already sewn. And so I'm going to make sure I have it lined up correctly, and my smaller white unit here in the center is at the bottom and the larger piece is at the top. And so then I'm just going to put the one wing right sides together. We're going to line that up and stitch that. Okay, and then I'm going to move that out of the way and go ahead and grab the other wing, right sides together, and we'll sew that on as well. Okay, so it is sewn together. Let's give that a press. Okay, I am going to press these seams open, but first I'm going to go ahead and set that seam on each side of that center part that we added. And then to press them open, I do like to use this wool curved pressing bar, and it's also a clapper there at the bottom. And I like to use that with this Easy Press pin by Acorn, and it's filled with a liquid. And I'm gonna just kind of finger press that open, and then I'm gonna take this pin and just kind of run some of this liquid onto the center of that seam there, and then put my iron right over it. And then that's going to give me a perfectly flat pressed seam. And then I'm going to do the other side as well. So I'm just going to kind of open it up with my fingers. Okay, and then I'm just going to give it another press while I've got it here nice and flat. And then you can see how nicely that pressed it. And then I can go ahead and just set my clapper on there just so that it helps get it even flatter once it is cooling down. So we'll just leave that there for a minute. Now we're going to sew our butterfly units together with some white sashing pieces. And so I'm just going to line those up. And then stitch a 1/4 inch away. So there's one piece that goes in the center, and then a smaller piece that goes on the top of the orange and the bottom of the yellow. Okay, and then I'm just going to press that towards the white on those 3 pieces. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to do with our butterfly blocks is I'm going to add a long white sashing piece on each side of that unit. And then I'm going to press that back towards those white pieces that we just added, and then that part is completed. Okay, now we're going to start on our bigger flower unit, and we're starting kind of from the center working outwards. And so I have laid it on this red folder to kind of better show you, since these whites blend in too much with the background. But I've kind of set my center yellow square on point here. And then we cut a square, and then we cut it on each diagonal, so it made four pieces, but we're only going to use 2. So we'll use 2, and the other 2 just set aside. And then to line this up, we're going to start with this side first, adding it on, and we're lining up the 90-degree of the triangle and this 90-degree corner of the square. So I'm going to put those right sides together, and then I'm going to stitch along this side here. and then that top triangle overhangs the back side of our square, which is fine. Okay, and then we're going to press that out. And then you can trim that off. I think I will. I'm just going to snip off that little white corner. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of press that back to itself. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the second piece on. And I'm lining up this 90-degree corner of the triangle with this 90-degree of the square. And so we're just going to put that right sides together. And so. Okay, I've lined up my corners here. And then when I start sewing, there's like a little valley right there where the corner of this triangle kind of overlaps, and that should be a 1/4 inch away, and I'm going to start there and stitch to the end. Okay, and then I'm going to fold that back, and that gives us the top part of our flower unit, and then we can trim that little bit off. I'm just going to leave it there for now. And then we're going to go ahead, I'm going to give that a press. Now we're going to start adding on the orange strip units, and this kind of goes together almost like a log cabin. So when we are lining this up, it is going to line up at this corner here on the yellow piece. So I'm going to match those corners up, and then at the top part here, this overhangs quite a bit, and that's totally fine. Just you know, kind of ignore that. We're lining up this corner here, and we're going to start there, and we're going to stitch all the way, and I'm going to stitch past this where the white part goes. I'm just going to stitch a little bit past. I don't have to go all the way here because there's nothing there. Just come out past the white. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of just finger press that back towards the orange. And so yes, this part overhangs totally fine. And then we're going to come and we're going to take the longer orange piece and add it to this side. So now we're lining up these two outer orange corners, and we're going to start there and go to the end of this white part here. Okay, I'm going to finger press that back. And then we're going to do the same thing with our red. We're going to take the shorter piece and we're going to add it to this side, lining up the red corner with this orange corner here. And I'm going to start stitching at that corner. And I just stitched a little bit past where the orange stops, and I'm going to finger press that out. And then I'm going to take the last red piece, the longer one, and I'm going to add it to this side. Again, I'm going to be starting at this corner down here, so I'm going to put that right sides together, and I'm going to start at that corner and stitch all the way to the end of this orange piece. Okay, and then I'm just going to kind of finger press that back, and it's kind of a awkward looking piece. Let's go give it a press. Okay, here we have our unit. It's pressed flat, and I've just kind of pressed everything towards the piece that I had just added, and it looks like it's laying pretty flat. Now we're going to do some trimming, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to trim off these extra pieces of the orange and red strips. And to do that, we are going to take a long ruler and we are going to line up the tip of the yellow so that it's a 1/4 inch away from the white edge. So we're making sure we're leaving a 1/4 inch from the corner of the yellow square to the edge of the white triangle. So we're going to line up that 1/4 inch line there. And then I'm also using another line here, 45° on my ruler, just to kind of give me another section to eyeball, a reference point to make sure it's nice and straight. And I'm kind of looking at the tops over here, the top over here, making sure that I want this as straight of a line as possible. But again, leaving that 1/4 inch seam allowance that we're going to have there. And then when I feel like I've got it lined up pretty good, that's where it looks good, then I'm just going to go ahead and cut all the way across the top portions there, trimming off those extra tails there. So now we have a neat looking triangle like that. So we do have another cut to make, and we're going to trim this bottom part of our unit here. And this, where we're trimming, needs to be 7.5 inches from the top of the edge that we just cut. So we're going to take, I've got a square ruler that's larger than 7.5. So this one happens to be a 9.5. And I am going to line up my top edge here at the 7.5 line. Okay. And then you can see down here at the bottom, there's just this little triangle piece that we're going to trim off. And I'm going to go ahead and just go straight, trim that straight off like that. Okay. And then I'm going to do one more thing while I'm here. I am going to just make a measure on the lines that is going to be 14.5 inches. So I'm going to take my long ruler and we are going to line this up. This ruler at the 7.25 is what I'm going to be putting on the corner of that yellow triangle, because that would be half of 7. 7.25 is half of 14.5. So I'm going to line that up. And I'm just kind of looking down. I want this corner to be 7.25 and all of these angles here meeting. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm just going to take a Frixion pin and I'm going to draw a line over on this red triangle just as a point of reference. That's going to get cut off later, but it's going to help us line up the next part. So then I'm just going to turn my ruler and do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to find that 7.25 mark and I'm put it on this angle here, the orange part, and then lining it up with the top of the yellow square there. And then I'm going to come over here and just draw a line also. Then we can kind of check that, and I'm going to turn my ruler. So from this line to this line, it should be 14.5, and that puts our center part right here lined up in the center. Okay, so that's just a point of reference. We're not going to trim that yet. I just drew a line. And then we're going to add on our white corner triangles. Okay, now I've got the 2 white large triangles that we cut, and we are going to add those to these sides here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this side first, and I am overlapping my white triangle 1/2 inch past the end of this red. And then I'm just kind of look up here where I've made the mark. I just want to make sure that the white part extends past that line. And it will all get trimmed down later, so it doesn't have to be like super perfect. But again, I'm just making sure I got a 1/2 inch overlap here. And then I've turned it right sides together, and then I'm going to stitch that I'm going to do the same with the other side. I'm just making sure that the white part here extends a 1/2 inch past, and sew that seam also, and then we'll press it. Okay, I've got my white corner here. This piece is hanging a 1/2 inch of the white is overhanging the end of that red, and then I'm going to go ahead and line up that and stitch along that side. Okay, and then when that gets folded back, it should look like that. And now let's go ahead and stitch the other side. And again, I've lined it up. It's overhanging by about a 1/2 inch. Okay, we're going to give those a press back, and then we're going to trim up that unit. Okay, now we're going to trim this up to 7.5 tall and 14.5 inches wide. So I have a 14.5 inch ruler, and so I'm just going to grab that, and I'm lining up a line that is straight with this red edge down here at the bottom of our flower. And then I'm also lining up so that the center is going to intersect with those seams down through that orange or the yellow square, the orange strip, and the red strip. And then I'm just going to take a Frixion pin and I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to kind of double check things. I'm going to measure twice and cut once. So I'm just going to draw a line so that I kind of have a point of reference. And if you don't have a large ruler, you can use your mat, you can use a longer ruler. Again, the line then that we would draw is 7.25 inches away. So I'm lining up 7.25 through the center here, lining it up straight with this cut edge here. And my ruler doesn't go all the way to the top, but that's okay, because again, I'm just going to draw a line. So draw a line on that side and do the same on the other side. So you just have a point of reference. And then we're going to come back through, and then we're going to cut the bottom part off at 7.5 inches. So my ruler's 6.5, so I'm going to use some lines on my mat, and I'm going to line up the top portion here with a line straight as I can. And then I do know that this red section down here was straight at 7.5. So I'm kind of lining it up at that line and making sure everything else is nice and straight. And again, I'm gonna just kind of at first just draw a line so I can double check everything. Okay, and this is a little off. I'm gonna adjust this a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Okay. And then when I'm confident that I've got it 7.5 inches and a straight edge along here, I'm going to go ahead and cut that. And then I don't have a lot that I'm trimming off here at the bottom. If you'd like to trim a little bit more, then before you add that white triangle section, move it down a little bit more than 1/2 inch. Like move it maybe 3/4 of an inch overhanging down here. You're still going to have some room up here. But you do have extra to trim, so it is oversized. And then I'm just going to go ahead and trim along the bottom. So now it's 7.5 inches tall, and then I'm just going to move my ruler over along my drawn line and cut there. And I'm going to rotate this and trim this side. Okay, get it lined up, trim that off, and then the top part of our flower is finished. So now we can begin on the leaf section. Okay, now we're going to be working on our leaf section, and here we're just going to take our 2 green rectangles and snowball each corner. I've taken my small white square, and I've drawn the diagonal line, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add that and stitch right on the line to all 4 corners. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and set those, press them back, and then trim off our excess. Okay, we're back at the sewing machine, and now with our leaf block, we are going to add a white rectangle to the outside of each leaf. So each leaf is going to get 1. So I'm just going to put those right sides together, line up the edges, and sew 1/4 inch away. Okay, and then we're going to press that white back. Okay, and I'm going to kind of orient them like this as they would be in my block. And then I've got 2 different sizes of rectangles that's going to go on the top and bottom. But the leaves are not going to be straight across from each other. They are offset. So on one side, we are going to have the larger rectangle put at the bottom, and the opposite side, the larger rectangle is at the top. And then we're going to add the smaller rectangle to the bottom on this one, and the smaller rectangle to the top on that one. And that makes them a little kitty-wampus from each other. They're not directly across the stem. So we're going to go ahead and add those white pieces on. Okay, I've got the 2 leaf side units sewn together, and then we're going to add the stem in the middle of those. And again, these are offsetting. They are not lined up exact. One's a little bit higher than the other. And I'm just going to turn those right sides together and stitch along that edge. Okay, and I have my design board here, and I've got the leaf section and the flower top section, and now I'm just going to add those 2 together, and I'm going to flip these right sides over. I am going to pin this because it is a longer seam, and I do kind of want it to come out lined up nicely. So I'm going to pin at each edge. Okay, and then just make sure my centers line up where I want them. Okay, and then we can stitch that seam. Okay, then we can open that up and give that a press. I'm going to press it towards the leaf unit. Super cute. Then we're going to add some side borders and a top and bottom border to get it the size that we need it to be. Okay, I'm going to be adding the side borders first. Okay, I've added the side borders, and then I've pressed that seam towards those borders. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the top and bottom. Okay, we've added our top and bottom borders, and I pressed it to those borders. And the last thing we're going to do then is take our large flower and our butterfly unit, and we're going to join those 2 together. So I'm going to orient it how it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to line up these edges. I probably will use a few pins just because when the seams get longer, it is harder to keep them where they're supposed to be. So we'll put a few pins in there. Okay, and then we'll stitch that. And I did backstitch at the beginning and end just because that is the edge of the block, and those sometimes can have a tendency to kind of pop open if they're handled a lot. So that way it just kind of locks the seams in place. Okay, so there is our gigantic unit completed. And I'm gonna go ahead and just press that to the butterfly side, and then that month is done. Thanks for watching.